probably didn't know this at the time, but my name is Hamda Yusuf. Well, actually, I guess it's a little more like Hamda Yusuf Abdul Muhammad Hussein Muhammad Mahmoud, and before you even say anything, stop. Because I already know that my name probably puts up more flags in an airport than a Mexican driving in Arizona. Know that the deep piercing stares are directed at my hijab and not my infectious smile. Know that I'm already judged not for who I am, but for what I wear. And just for the record, it isn't called a towel. But somehow, despite all that self-pity, I was helped to realize that it really shouldn't matter how you perceive me to be. It should only matter how I perceive myself to be. And while I already know that I'm Hamda Yusuf, poet, I'm Hamda Yusuf, and I've seen The Lion King 17 times, and I've cried every single time Mufasa died. I'm Hamda Yusuf, and Albus Dumbledore is kind of my hero. I'm Hamda Yusuf, and I can solve a Rubik's Cube in under a minute. Well, I'm Hamda Yusuf, and I used to be able to solve a Rubik's Cube under a minute. I'm Hamda Yusuf, and I can scare an entire plane full of people by just getting up to use the bathroom. I'm Hamda Yusuf, and I'm Muslim. Not Muslim or Islam's, but Muslim. It's really not that hard to say, or bad like the media portrays, or evil like the men holding guns that the TV displays. It's a peaceful, self-fulfilling religion, and I really couldn't ask for more, and I'm sick and tired of hearing about countries banning the burqa to protect women's rights when it's really just them taking away our right to choose. And since when has it become okay to take off the layers, but illegal to try and put them back on? Is it me, or is the world going insane? Threats of burning Qurans and protesting against building mosques as if we had done something wrong besides fight for the American dream we were told to fight for. And you, every Muslim is a terrorist, and every terrorist is the Muslim you. I get all my facts from Sean Hannity. You have the audacity to tell me there's no such thing as Islamophobia in the world? Well, I'm sorry, because I wrote you a poem, and it goes a little something like this. Roses are red, violets are blue. You're a fucking racist, and so's Fox News. You see, You see, I promised myself that I would speak to every single person that's ever called me a towelhead. And unfortunately for both of us, you're on my list. So how about you take a seat on my couch and take a sip of my mother's tea, and I'll explain to you, as politely as can be, how my father has told me more times that I can count on my fingers that I can be whatever I want to be. I can be that lawyer, be that doctor, be that engineer, but I will never, ever, ever be just another towelhead. So I am a spoken word artist, which is really just a fancy way of saying I enjoy telling stories. And perhaps to a lesser extent, I enjoy having audiences clap for me for telling those stories. It's just a perk of the job, I would say. Growing up, stories were some of the most consistent things in my life, and the ones my parents told me were some of the most important ones. And I didn't understand when I was a child, but they always had a sense of urgency about them. And it was because my parents were fighting a battle. Every day I came home from school, I came home knowing a little more English than I knew Somali. And that scared them. And it scared me because I felt myself slowly losing my language as it was being replaced by English. So the stories my parents told me became a way of resistance. It was a way of fighting back and of preserving my language as well as my culture. Those stories were incredibly important to me, and one particular one that my father told me was probably the most important one. He enjoyed telling me about the ancient traditions, true ancient traditions of Somalia. And one of these ancient traditions was of poetry, gabe, which means poetry in Somali. And what two disputing clans would do when they were fighting over land or what have you, they would, before they fought with swords, they would fight with words. And the way they did that was each clan would send their very best poet to the probably 12th century Somali equivalent of Fifth Avenue Theater, and they would battle it out, flying metaphors and similes and alliteration, and this would all happen before those clans battled with weapons. And I thought that was the most amazing thing ever. I was telling people about it for weeks, hey, have you heard? And I don't think anybody thought it was as cool as I did, and I didn't understand why, because, basically, my ancestors invented the modern-day rap battle. Yeah. So I guess I'm saying you're welcome, yeah? So that's our gift to you all, the rap battle. My father telling me that story was my first tiny baby step towards poetry. And those of you who know of the art of spoken word know that it is not a gentle one. And so instead of, it isn't exactly quiet snaps in darkened rooms where people talk like this. It's not like that. It's loud. It is obnoxiously loud. It is unapologetically loud. And so instead of me dancing around the possibility of coming on stage and performing a poem, spoken word yanked me on stage and put a microphone in my hand and said, "Speak." So I did. And my voice was incredibly shaky and unsure of itself, but something amazing happened anyway. People listened to me. And they didn't just listen to me, they connected with me, they laughed with me, they groaned with me, they hooted and hollered and yelled their amens from the back of the room, and it electrified me. Slowly, my voice started getting louder and more confident until it had completely transformed not only spoken word Hamda, but everyday, incredibly awkward teenager Hamda. I was no longer that quiet, unassuming Muslim girl who was exceedingly polite. I was unapologetic. I was loud and fierce. I learned how to stop apologizing for the ignorance of others. This was the biggest gift that spoken word gave to me, my voice. So it handed me, along with that microphone that was shaking in my hand, it handed me my voice. And through that, I was able to find my place in a country where, depending on who you asked, I was too much of some things and not enough of others. I was simultaneously too black and not black enough. I was too Muslim, not Muslim enough. I was weird and foreign and totally un-American. But I found my place in all of that. So this is me passing on the torch to you, giving you your microphone and your voice. Because we all have stories that are important. You might not think that they're very important. You might not think that they're funny or that they're too angry like I thought about my stories. But they are yours. They are uniquely your poems, your stories. So this is your homework for tonight. I want you all to go home, tell a story to somebody. Tell your story to somebody. Your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, girlfriend, your cat, your dog. You can stand in a mirror and tell your own story to yourself, because sometimes our most important stories are ones that we hide from ourselves. And if you want, you can come find me after this and tell me your story. I promise I will listen as wonderfully as you all have been listening to me. And before I end my talk, I'd like to share one more of my stories with you. To the boy with the bleary blue eyes who told me racism is over. It's really not. You see, the very fact that you felt the need to share this little tidbit of information with me really proves the opposite of your point. Funny how it always seems that the people who claim racism has ceased to exist are the very same people who experience it the least. I wonder if there's a connection there. Spoiler alert. There is. When this boy told me of his colorblindness, I smiled and nodded, much like I had been doing for years, but today was not the day for my Seattle-like passive aggression, and so I snapped and wrote him a poem. Dear boy with the bleary blue eyes, when you tell me racism is over, you are telling me my battles are no longer worth fighting. When you question why we even bother to march and protest, you are telling me I have no place in your carbon copy world. Let's ignore the fact that a man called me a nigger on the bus last week and somehow managed to make me feel ashamed and embarrassed. Let's ignore the people who told me I only got into college because of the excess melanin on my skin and somehow failed to realize that on most days, I'm the only black dot on the horizon of my lecture halls. Let's ignore the actors who go on racist rants and then have the audacity to say that they're not actually racist. I'm sorry, but if you're yelling at a heckler and the first word that comes out of your mouth is nigger, you just might be a racist. If I've just met you and the first thing you do is tell me a black joke, and when I get offended, you tell me to stop being so sensitive, you just might be a racist. If you tell a black person to take the bone out of their nose before talking to you, you just might be a racist. If we've just had a 10-minute conversation regarding the merits of military intervention in Syria, and you end it by saying, "You're just so articulate for a black girl." I'm sorry, but that's not actually a compliment. Having you be surprised at the fact that I can string two words together and make a sentence isn't a compliment. Telling me I'm your favorite black person isn't a compliment. Telling me I look so exotic isn't a compliment. And gentlemen, also not a pickup line. No, you can't touch my skin. No, you can't feel my hair. Stop asking me to teach you how to twerk, because I don't actually know how to. When you mispronounce my name for the 10th time in a row and refuse to learn the correct pronunciation, it does not tell me you find other languages challenging. It tells me you find other languages inferior. My name was handed down to me by my forefathers. Look closely enough and you'll find an uprising between its letters, a revolution as a middle name, and a refugee camp as a hyphen. No, you can't give me a nickname. My name is Hamda. 2 syllables. Clap it out if you need to. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.